Hello, everyone. I think we're connected. It looks like we got a good connection. So it's already 6 o'clock here. So we'll jump right in. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Okay, so continuing on with talks about the five khandha, the aggregates of clinging, and last time we did the body. So this week I'm going to talk about what's usually listed in the second place, the aggregate of Vedana, which means the generally translated feelings. Now, the first thing to point out, which I think it's always important with discussing these Pali terms, is that the English translation is very often not exact. And the word feelings in English tends to imply a very broad category, and it's pretty much synonymous with emotions. And well, in a way, you could say Vedana is an emotional base. It's not the same thing as English word emotion. It's narrower. It's more precisely defined. The English word emotion covers a broad range of mental states, and actually, it's interesting to point out that in Pali there does not seem to be any single word that exactly means the same range of states as the English word emotion. There's certainly Pali names for all the specific emotions: love, hate, jealousy, anger. They'll all have Pali equivalents, but to lump them all together, there isn't really a suitable word. At one time, I was attending a series of lectures by the Dalai Lama, and he was uh, speaking in Tibetan, and it was being translated. And I don't understand anything in Tibetan, so I was just relying on the translation. But I noticed at one point he was talking about emotional states, and in the middle of his Tibetan, he would throw in the English word emotion. And I asked somebody later who does understand Tibetan what that's about, and she told me that in Tibetan there is no word for emotion, and I thought that was interesting. And there was a couple of other Theravada monks there as well, and we got to discussing whether there's a word in Pali for emotion, and we couldn't come up with one, and it appears there isn't one. And somebody said he didn't think there was a word equivalent word in Thai either. So it's not because it doesn't appear in these languages. I would say emotions as a category is not really a natural expression. Most of what we call emotions in English, in if we analyze them in terms of the aggregates, they would be a mix of Vedana and Sankara. So what we mean by Vedana precisely is not the same thing as English feelings, but it is a kind of feeling. It's a immediate emotive response to phenomena. If you look at the dependent origination, when sense contact occurs, the immediate next event is Vedana, this feeling. So it's a very quick, immediate reaction to the sensing and perception of objects. Every object will then result in the production of a feeling, and the feelings are very simple emotive responses, and they can be categorized as of three types: pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral, or neither pleasant nor unpleasant. And of course, they occur on, we could say, on a spectrum, in that you can have something that's mildly pleasant, or something that is ecstatically, wonderfully joyous, and everything in between. Likewise, with the other side of the equation, you could have something that's just mildly irritating to something that causes great extreme distress and agony. Now, a couple of things to note about this this process. First of all, is that it's uh, inescapable. There's an immediate Vedana reaction to each sense impression. Everything is either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And neutral is not a lack of feeling, it's a particular feeling of just the object has been seen and registered, but there isn't a emotive response to it. It's neither pleasant nor unpleasant. I tend to think that for most people, most of the time, neutral feeling is the dominant reaction. If you could, which is not really possible, but if you could somehow keep a running tally all day long of your feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, I think you'd find that most of the time, neutral would be by far the most common reaction. Most sense impressions don't move us either to pleasure or pain. The other important thing to remember when considering feelings is that it's, in Abhidhamma terms, it's a resultant factor, which means it's not something subject to our will or control. And this means it has no ethical content. It's not good or virtuous to feel pleasure or to feel pain, nor is it sinful or wicked. There's nothing we can do about it. It's just an immediate resultant. It's our reaction to these feelings that's important. And if we return to the formula of the dependent origination, after Vedana comes craving. And that's not classed as a resultant, it's classed as a karmic volitional. So we can react, the ordinary, if we don't put up any effort, the ordinary course of events is we will react to the feelings and crave the pleasant and be averse to the unpleasant, and generally ignore the neutral. So the three roots of defilement, greed, hatred, and ignorance, they occur right here. So many teachers will say, if you're considering the dependent origination from a practice perspective, it's the link between feeling and craving that's critical. So this means, first of all, that we need to be mindful of our feelings. This is the component of satipatthana, the vedanusati, mindfulness directed towards the feelings. We should be aware of our reactions. This is pleasant feeling. This is neutral feeling. This is unpleasant feeling. And if we are fully mindful of it, then we have the power to not succumb to them, not to be driven on to the next stages of the dependent origination, but to break the process right there. Now, some particulars about the feelings. As far as the sense bases go, it's said in the Abhidhamma teachings that only the mind base and the body base, that is the sense of touch, directly produce pleasant and unpleasant feelings. With sight, hearing, taste, and smell, they do not produce in themselves immediately a pleasant or unpleasant feeling. The content of that sense impression is passed on to the mind sense, and the mind sense very quickly judges or contemplates the object and feels it to be pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. The body sense is the only physical sense where feelings are immediately produced. A cool breeze on a hot day is immediately felt as pleasant. Stepping on a sharp stone with your bare foot is immediately felt as painful. There's no parsing or judgment involved in that. It's immediately sensed from the tactile sense that these sensations are pleasant or unpleasant. Whereas something like something we see with the eyes, a visual object, is not itself inherently pleasant or unpleasant. There's an old saying, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And likewise would say the sense of taste. We talk about acquired tastes. That's because no taste is in itself pleasant or unpleasant. It's our own judgment or conditioning towards it. And that conditioning can change. So, people can broadly share the same kind of judgment about what's beautiful and what's ugly, but ultimately it's in each case a personal perception. The beauty or ugliness is not inherent in the object, whereas pleasure and pain on the physical level is something immediate. So it's inherent in the object. It's always painful to step on a sharp stone. So also some of the auxiliary teachings in the Abhidhamma about feelings are of interest. One is the role of joyful feeling in the production of kama. When we do an action by body, speech, or mind, a volitional action, we're creating kama in every case. And there are a number of factors that determine the weight of the kama. Some kamas are very trivial and some are more significant. And one of these factors is the feeling tone. And joy here acts, or pleasant feeling, to be technical, sukha vedana, acts as a amplifier of kama for both positive and negative kamas. So a good deed, some act of generosity or kindness that you perform, if it's done with joy in your heart, then it's more karmically beneficial than if it's just done in a dull, mechanical way. But this also works for negative kamas. that if you do some act of cruelty or selfishness and make negative karma, if you do that with joy, if you relish turning that knife, then it's worse. It's a more harmful karma than if it's done cold-heartedly. Still, in either case, it's negative, but the negative results are more if it's associated with joy. Likewise, with the good karmas, they're more powerful if they're associated with joy. Another thing we find is that, in Abhidhamma, there's one of the themes is cross-referencing which mental states can occur together and which cannot. And it's an interesting observation to contemplate that there's no case where unpleasant feeling is associated with a karmically positive or a kusala state. This is something worth considering, and also that joy. If we go back to the sutta, the Sutta Pitaka, we see joy as one of the enlightenment factors. So there's no spiritual benefit ever in feeling sad or down. I have to be kind of careful about how we approach that, because I have given that teaching and find some people have take it the wrong way, and they feel even worse about themselves. Remember also that feeling is a karmic resultant, so it's not under your control. At least not in a trivial, momentary way. It's not under your control. You can set up conditions and encourage your mind towards more positive states, but you can't just will yourself to feel pleasant or unpleasant. But this means that whenever you feel unpleasant mental states, that it's associated with some unskillful mind state, and that's worth knowing, and it can be useful to know. As for neutral feeling, which in the Abhidhamma is called adukkhama sukham, neither pleasant nor unpleasant, this has also an important role to play, and it can be easily overlooked. Not seeing neutral feeling tends to dullness and ignorance, and it's the essence of boredom. And neutral feeling has, in its simplest form, it's just neither pleasant nor unpleasant. But in a more spiritually developed form is upekkha, is the equanimity, which is associated always with a neutral feeling tone. If you take the sequence of mental states in the progression through the jhanas, it's superior. Upekkha, at being associated with fourth jhana, is then therefore spiritually superior to bliss or sukha, which is third jhana. So this is not just a dull, not reactive, non-reactive state. It's a clearly mindful but at peace. It's also in the vipassana path, the stage of equanimity about formations. Upekkha sankhara is the critical stage where enlightenment can happen. So upekkha has a very important spiritual content to it, which is the kind of neutral feeling that's fully mindful, peaceful, and aware. It's the non-reaction to things. So feelings or Vedana, like all the aggregates, are empty. They're devoid of a self. They're impermanent, subject to change, and they're suffering through their impermanence. Now, even pleasant feeling is a form of dukkha, because it's never perfect or fully satisfying, and also it's transient. We always lose it. The analogy the Buddha uses for Vedana is soap bubbles. You know, soap bubbles can be very big and colorful, and but they're completely insubstantial and easily pass out of existence. So if you feel overwhelmed by your feelings, think of them as soap bubbles. They blow up and they look big and colorful, but there's really nothing there. So I'll stop there with some miscellaneous remarks about Vedana, and can spend a bit of time dealing with questions that you good people are putting into the chat. Feelings are a huge trap of samsara. Most people are chasing good feelings throughout their life, even meditators. What advice can you give to avoid falling into the trap of pleasant feelings? Well, the thing is, to recognize a pleasant feeling is just a pleasant feeling. And it's neither good nor bad. It just is as it is. And the problem comes not in the feeling, but in the craving for the feeling. So a pleasant feeling arises, you enjoy it in the moment, but it passes. If you are mindful and don't give in to the craving, then you don't need to suffer from it. And it's certainly chasing after pleasant feeling is certainly a kind of foolish endeavor. You realize the impermanence and unsatisfying nature of the feelings. What is the Theravada view on the matter of organ donation when brain death has happened to the person? Many people report out-of-body experiences. The concept of mind-made body, or body within the body, talked about in the suttas, which can be seen and apprehended. Events surrounding it. What if this awareness is present and sees the moment the organs are being ripped apart from the physical body, leading to a great sense of attachment, thus resulting in lower rebirth, despite a huge act of generosity? Yeah, certainly, I think this is the whole question of organ donation is not a simple one. Let's say it's certainly an act of generosity, and be karmically beneficial in that way. But yeah, there is the problem of when does actual death, in the Buddhist sense, meaning that the mind is no longer associated with that bodily form in any way, occur. Theravada doesn't really go into this question in such detail as the Tibetans. And I know in the Tibetan way of thinking, consciousness can still be associated with the body for some time after medical death. And, I have heard of one Tibetan Lama who was asked this question, and his first reply was, "Oh yes, it's good to donate your organs." But then when someone explained the process to him a bit, he says, "Do you mean to tell me they need to take the organs out of the body while it's fresh?" And then he kind of changed his mind. So I don't know. I can't make a definitive answer to that. As for mind-made body, yeah, that's one of the abhinyas or psychic powers. It's uh, it's what some of the Western esoteric traditions call astral projection. That uh, kind of nimitta of the body can be transferred out and travel around. Please explain the feeling of remorse referenced in the Sankhya Sutta. If remorse for past mistakes arises, how should one practice? Rejoice immediately in keeping sila. Yeah, that's one of the problems that meditators all face is um, regret and remorse. None of us have been perfect in our lives, and we can uh, sometimes mistakes or wrong things, karmically harmful things that we have done can arise in memory and cause us distress. Uh, I think the most well, two things. The first thing is, going forward to try and avoid creating further occasion for regret and remorse, like live skillfully. And the second thing is when such images and memories arise in the mind, to remind oneself of emptiness and not self. These conditions that that occurred at that time in my consciousness continuum, they were not me, not mine. And I don't have to identify with them anymore. I don't have to uh, suffer from them if I don't take ownership of them. Next question. I have a tendency to suppress emotions which has not been particularly healthy for me psychologically. How can one skillfully acknowledge emotions without repressing or indulging in them? Yeah, that's always the kind of the balance. It can be tricky. Like you should certainly be mindful of when an emotion arises, but try not to surrender to it or let it take control of you. One again, a return to this, the kind of the magic key to a lot of things is the recognition of not self. So a lot of people have found a simple trick with, let's say, anger. When anger arises, try and recognize it, or name it in your internally. Don't say I am angry at this person. Treat anger as an object and name it as anger has arisen. So anger is outside of the consciousness. It's outside of the knowing mind. It's an object. And as long as you don't identify with it and take ownership of it, it won't make you act in a foolish way or take over your whole mental state. Next, Ajahn, what gives rise to aggregates? Is it karma, and how do mental formations and Vedana come to be? Is it because the mind wishes to experience something all the time? Well, yeah, I think it's somewhat of both. It's ultimately karma. We're because of our if we look at dependent origination, because of ignorance, karmic formations, because of karmic formations, consciousness. The whole process begins with ignorance, and then we are basically acting in a blind, stumbling way and creating trouble in the universe, and then our consciousness arises to those conditions, and we come into manifestation equipped with these aggregates. And the other So the first factor is ignorance, and the second factor, which you identify here, is uh, desire or craving. And at a very fine-grained level of analysis, in each moment, mind is craving to take an object, and that's kind of the force that creates the universe. The mind craving to take the next object, and that's something you can actually learn to first of all be mindful of, to be aware of, and then to let it go and disengage from it. That's the whole process of vipassana meditation. Would you please go into more depth about this mind-made body? Where does it fit into the five aggregates? Well, I don't know how much more detail I can go about it. It's classed as one of the psychic powers, so it's not like a normal thing. It's a development, and it's said to be perfect in every limb and faculty, so it would have the sense of sight and so on. It's a astral or psychic body, so I think we can probably assume that I mean, this is I'm kind of extrapolating a little bit, but from the brief descriptions in the texts, I think we can assume that it does have a kind of materiality that may be the kind of subtle matter like the Brahma gods are made of. That it does have it's not it would have the all five aggregates in some sense. And when you produce this, it's a nimitta, meaning a created thing. You produce this and take it out of your body. Now your physical body then becomes unconscious, and your consciousness is operating through the vehicle of this subtle body, and it can travel around and observe things. It has the five senses operating. Now, how can we transform dullness and boredom into calm and equanimity? It seems like pleasant, unpleasant feelings are easier to grasp and transcend. Well, think of neutral feeling as peace. That's the highest expression, is being at peace. If boredom arises, that's you're not at peace. You're having some craving for experience. You're not at peace with the immediate moment. Could you do a talk on psychic powers? I might, yeah, I might talk about that sometime. That might be interesting. Okay, some people are asking some kind of very personal questions here, so I don't really feel. For one thing, I don't have enough information to really go on, and I don't think really this is the right vehicle. Ajahn, I know in Yogacara, seeds of karma are stored in the storehouse consciousness. Is this an aggregate or just an aspect of consciousness? And what do the Theravada say about this? Well, the storehouse consciousness, the alaya vijnana, is it would be in the aggregate system of the aggregates. It would be part of the vijnana aggregate. It's not something found in the Theravada teachings. That in the Yogacara, they have a way of analyzing vijnana differently. Um, and the alaya vijnana, or storehouse consciousness, is one of, I think it's 8 consciousnesses, whereas Theravada we have just the 6 sense consciousness. So they have those 6 plus alaya vijnana and something else I forget the name of. It's ways of analyzing the at a more detailed level. I think it's analyzing the mind consciousness, mano vijnana, and its operation. And we have in Theravada the idea that, which I think is shared by all Buddhists actually, that karma is always made in the mind. It's the volitional movement of the mind that creates karma. So then, the Yogacara school took the analysis further to kind of explain how that works. Do you have any advice on how to practice mindfulness while eating? Should I relate to food as medicine, or do I perceive it as foul and rejoice in the generosity of the giver, or rejoice in the generosity of the giver? Well, those are all different approaches, different practices. Let's say there is one practice in the Visuddhimagga. One of the 40 contemplations is a contemplation of the repulsiveness of nutriment. It's also a good practice to have generosity for everyone who's contributed to the meal in any way. Just simple mindfulness is a good practice of being aware of the sense experience related to eating. And one kind of simple, although it's surprisingly difficult to do, but it's a simple way of practicing mindfulness of eating, is to make a practice of only eating one spoonful at a time. What I mean by that is you take a spoon or a fork full of food, put it in your mouth, and completely chew it and swallow it before you look at the plate and start picking around preparing your next morsel. You deal with one mouthful at a time only, and not jumping ahead in the mind to the next one. It takes you a bit longer to eat a plate full of food, but it's a good exercise, and surprisingly difficult to keep it going. Is that with eating, the greed mind automatically gets involved. It tries to take over. It starts looking on the plate to see, well, what do I want next? The thought of reaching higher states of existence and perhaps contacting other beings that are not normally seen arouses a deep fear in me, a fear of having a psychosis, which is a mind state accompanied by hallucinations. How does one get past this fear and discern what they are seeing is actually there? Well, I think if you have a fear of experiencing other levels or realms of existence, you're not going to experience those realms. You're not open to them, so it's not possible for you to experience them. Now, some people, you could say, have experiences that are unpleasant and frightening, that are spontaneous, and that was what you would call a psychosis. And that does occur, but I don't think you don't need to be afraid. A lot of these kind of higher experiences only come when you're ready for them. How do the aggregates of devas form? In the past, you said they just poof into existence. I feel this is conflict with the dependent origination because they have no birth process. Well, the 12 stages of dependent origination are really meant to describe a human existence, although with slight modification, it does apply to devas too. That is their birth process. Their birth process is they just appear in that realm, fully formed, by the force of the karma that they made in their previous, excuse me, presumably human existence. They make good karma, they die, and they immediately form in the Deva realm. It's a more subtle form of existence, so they don't have to go through all the stages of being an embryo and so on. They just immediately appear in that realm. Is there any difference between how arahant feelings arise to an anagami or any other non-fully enlightened being? Well, I think the main difference with a arahant is that unpleasant mental feeling never occurs. Unpleasant physical feeling can occur, as we have in the stories of the Buddha when he had when Devadatta tried to kill him by throwing a rock at him and down a hill, and the rock broke up and one fragment hit him in the foot and cut his foot, and he had painful sensations. And there's a story in the commentary about some old karma that was because of, but the point is the Buddha could feel physical pain, but he doesn't have the mental reaction to it. So he doesn't have mental unpleasant feeling. And I think the dominant feeling tone for an enlightened person would be neutrality or upekkha, but there would also be capable of experiencing joy. Okay, Norma Sky Dower says, Dancer Dower says that I'm late for the Dhamma place. P.S. They landed on the moon, Odysseus. I'm not sure what that's referring to. My friend works in a corporate environment. How can they practice Dhamma where they tell him all the time that's how he needs to be striving for more? Yeah, that's difficult. If the sort of capitalist culture is not really conducive to Dhamma, because it has to be based on, for the economy to work, it has to be based on greed. It's difficult to be pure in the world. And it's probably not. It's probably almost impossible, but you just need to try and find your own inner space, and try to keep that inner space peaceful and calm and steady. Okay, so I think we'll stop there. We've had a good run, and the gods of the internet have been treating me well lately. We had, I know, a couple of weeks ago, had all sorts of problems, but the stream held up this time. So next week we're going to deal with sanya perception. That's a quite an interesting topic, and so we'll see you same time, same place next week.